We talked to a local couple who warned police about the gunman minutes before the shooting started. Mike and Amber Jafrisha from Crawford County say police could have done more to stop gunman Thomas Crooks. They came to the political rally at the last minute and watched Crooks climb up the building.
And as soon as I turned around, I could see this guy shimmying up the building. I did not realize he had a gun at that point. I thought, this is somebody watching the rally. They're going to go get the best seat in the house, and maybe they can see more from up on the roof.
But when someone yelled, "Gun," Amber ran to tell police. Mike took this picture on his phone of Thomas Crooks taking aim.
One ran right by me and was like, "Where's he at? Where's he at?" We're like, "He's right there on the roof." We seen him plain as day.
And the cops kept saying to us, "Where's he at? Where's he at?" And we're like, "He's right there. He's right there." Like, just come back here and you can see him. But
what did they
didn't
do?
want to. I mean, I hate to say it, but they were just like so confused, and they were running in circles, and they just did not know what to do, to be honest. I mean, it all happened so fast.
They say it took several minutes for an officer to decide to climb up on the building to see if he could find the gunman.
It took between 2 to 4 minutes for the police to respond. That's ridiculous. They're supposed to be there to protect Donald Trump, and they failed. Why didn't somebody climb up there? Oh, someone did. Then they let go when they saw his gun. He could have held on with one hand and shot with the other, but maybe he wasn't strong enough. Why didn't they shoot up there on top of the roof, which would at least have distracted him enough to where Secret Service could have got a beat on him? Every cop on the ground should have poured a barrage of shots on top of that roof, but not one shot from the local police in 4 minutes. Something's not right with that picture.
Meanwhile, new video highlights the moments leading up to the shooting. The crowd saw the shooter on the roof and appeared to be getting into position while the former president was talking about immigration to the crowd. Take a listen to what happened next.
Yeah, look, there he is.
Because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof again.
Stunning new video tonight showing the moment Donald Trump's would-be assassin climbed onto the roof of that building just 2 minutes before he opened fire.
Yeah, look, there he is.
You can hear bystanders desperately trying to alert police. Authorities now using that video as part of the investigation. And tonight, ABC News has learned that heavily armed local police were stationed inside that building and missed Thomas Crooks climbing up the outside of the building to the roof. The same building was being used as a staging area for local police, according to 2 law enforcement officials. And Butler Township officials are confirming ABC News' reporting that a local police officer climbed up the roof and confronted Brooks moments before the shooting.
The officer grabbed hold of the edge of the building, pulled himself up to be able to look, and according to what he's told me, shooter turned, rifle was pointed at the officer. The officer, defensive move, kind of ducked, fell, lost his grip on the building.
Investigators tonight trying to determine whether roof access had been properly locked down. The shooter climbing seemingly unimpeded about 400 feet from the stage with a direct line of sight on the former president.
This image obtained by the entertainment news outlet TMZ shows the exact moment the shooter, who was lying on his stomach, lines up his shot from the roof. Clearly questions about how he was able to do that without being stopped. The gunman was shot dead moments after this.
And that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened. Probably 20 million people. And that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
The sniper had 8 to 11 seconds to shoot. Why didn't he shoot? In the video, you can see it appears he flinched or fumbled his gun while the gunman was shooting.
Probably 20 million people. And that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Down, baby, down.
Take a look at what happened.
In Washington, lawmakers demanding answers, calling on the Secret Service director to appear before Congress. We sat down with Director Kim Cheadle today for an exclusive interview.
What was your reaction when you saw the events unfold on Saturday?
Shock, and then concern, obviously, for the former president. This is an event that should have never happened.
Who is most responsible for this happening?
What I would say is that the Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the former president.
So the buck stops with you?
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service. It was unacceptable, and it's something that shouldn't happen again.
One police officer tried to climb up on the roof, and when he got up there, it was almost as if he had made eye contact with the shooter, and I think that he had a hold of the roof with both hands. There was nothing he could do, so he just let go and fell to the ground.
Seconds later, the gunfire started, injuring the former president, injuring 2 rally-goers, and killing Trump supporter Corey Comparator. Do you think there was enough time with your warning for police officers to stop this from happening? Tell me about that.
Yeah. It was like so crazy because we were all running around, gun. And like in the background, I hear, Trump's talking and the chart was up and he was talking about that. And it's like, we're recording this and he's still talking. It's like, why is he still up there? What is going on?
Yeah.
It was wild.
We thought he definitely should have been off the stage. I mean, before that guy ever shot.
We're learning shocking new details about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump over the weekend. A Secret Service spokesman tells CNN that agents did not personally sweep the building where the gunman was perched at Saturday's rally. A source says one of 2 local counter snipers was supposed to be covering that very building. The Pennsylvania State Police says they were not responsible for that area. The head of the Secret Service, we should know, Kimberly Cheadle, announced this morning that the agency will fully participate in the independent review announced by President Biden. And a senior law enforcement official says the gunman, who was identified as 20-year-old Thomas Crooks, bought 50 rounds of ammo just before that rally.
Here's how the attack unfolded. President Trump was speaking from a stage located here, with Secret Service snipers in position on the roof of a building behind the stage. The suspected gunman was on the roof of another building less than 450 feet away from where Trump was speaking, with a clear line of sight.
And look what happened to our country.
Moments before the shooting, we can hear nearby spectators saying they see someone with a gun.
He's got a gun!
At the same time, while Trump speaks, the Secret Service snipers can be seen facing the gunman's direction. We see the agent on the roof pick his head up just before shots ring out at 6:15. Secret Service agents rush to pull Trump to the ground. The suspected gunman, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, was shot and killed.
Party here all day. You can see behind us at the Brinkles Farm and Greenhouse here. We had a party, and we all decided, hey, when we hear Trump up there, we're going to walk up through the field, stand by the trees up there under the shade, and watch and listen to the rally. Right? We couldn't see him, but we could hear him. So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, but. We noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle, absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police were like, huh, what? Like they didn't know what was going on. We're like, hey, right here on the roof. We can see him from right here. We see him. He's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2-3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
So you're certain that the shots came from that guy on the roof?
100%. 100%.
And he was up there for a couple of minutes?
He was up there.
You saw him up there for a couple of minutes?
Absolutely. At least 3 to 4 minutes.
And you were telling the police and the Secret Service?
We were telling the police. We were pointing at him for the Secret Service, who were looking at us from the top of the barn. They were looking at us the whole time when we were standing by that tree.
Could they see
binoculars?
Could they?
I don't know what to say, man. I'll tell you is, if I walked up close to there with anything that Secret Service considered a problem, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you right now. But I don't know why a guy who we're standing there pointing out to police and Secret Service is crawling up the roof.
Were you outside the security perimeter?
Yes, right there by that tree. Yeah. We were outside the security perimeter. But my question is, there's only a few buildings around here. Why is Secret Service not on every building here?
I was up at the fence line, saw the guy move from roof to roof, told an officer that he was on the roof. The officer come looking, I went back to where I was standing, heard that there was somebody that could see the person, so I went back to where they were standing, saw the person, went back and told the officer again that if he goes back to that particular spot, he can see the person, figuring that he would go in radio. And when I turned around to go back to where I was is when the gunshots started, and then it was just chaos and we all came running away.
Thomas Crooks was a high school student when he appeared in an ad for an investment company. We found this video on his high school Facebook page explaining computer coding to another student.
The signal is decreasing.
Crooks's high school years were troubled. He was rejected by the school rifle team. Crooks's aim was comically bad, according to one report.
He was in the same homeroom as me.
Former classmate Sarah D'Angelo says Crooks studied the assassination of President Kennedy in honors American history class.
You kind of had to make your own conspiracy theory about where the shooter was and, how you thought it was done.
He was also bullied at school and sat by himself, friendless, in the cafeteria at lunch.
He was bullied almost every day.
In what way? Can you explain?
He would sit alone at lunch. He was just an outcast, and you know how kids are nowadays, so they're gonna see someone like that and they're gonna target him because they think it's funny or whatever. So it's the best way I can describe it. And it's honestly kind of sad. I don't want to say this is what provoked it, but you never know.
Yeah. You said he was a loner?
Yeah. I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but he was just bullied. He was bullied so much.
This was high school?
Yeah.
What did they, do you remember at all what they said to him or called him?
No. He was just made fun of, I guess, for the way he dressed or his appearance.
Stop. This video shows Crooks goofing around with other students. Kohler says Crooks wore an anti-COVID mask long after they were required.
Thomas Crooks.
This is Crooks's 2022 high school graduation. He graduated community college in May with an associate's degree in engineering science. He found work as a dietary aide at a nursing home after passing a background check. You could see behind me this cop car and this crime scene tape, which is blocked off the neighborhood where the shooter lived with his family. Neighbors tell us the family kept to themselves.
All I have heard is that they were a very reclusive family and they didn't really talk to people, so people that live around him don't really know them.
The motive for firing at Trump remains a mystery. Crooks was a registered Republican, but donated $15 to a progressive group. When 20-year-old Crooks was taken down by a Secret Service sniper, he wore a T-shirt from Demolition Ranch, a YouTube channel that features firearms. The FBI are now scouring Crooks's phone for clues to a motive. This is his voicemail message.
Hello, this is Thomas Crooks. Is not available.
The search for insights into the mind of the would-be assassin is just beginning.
And like we told you just minutes ago, we are learning more about the other people who were shot yesterday. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro says 50-year-old Corey Compertor was killed. Shapiro said the firefighter was at the rally with his wife and 2 daughters and dove to protect them with his body when he was shot. The governor said that he did speak with his wife.
She also asked that I share with all of you that Corey died a hero.
57-year-old David Dutch and 74-year-old James Copenhaver were also injured in the shooting. They're in critical condition, but their vital signs have stabilized.
An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation, everything. It's not who we are as a nation. It's not America. And we cannot allow this to happen. Unity is the most elusive goal of all, but nothing is important than that right now, unity.
The deadly shooting has raised significant questions about the effectiveness of the security tasked with protecting the former president. As WRAL's Laura Levine reports, the probe has already highlighted a series of failures that allowed the gunman to breach security and open fire at the rally.
Secret Service now under fire after former President Donald Trump was shot at during his Pennsylvania rally.
Good to respond effectively. That's the next step. But through planning and good intelligence gathering and strong security strategies and protocols, they first and foremost have to prevent this from happening.
This is former FBI Assistant Director and former head of the FBI Charlotte office, Chris Swecker. He calls the string of events a security breakdown from start to finish.
You plan for everything to go wrong. And the planning phase of this seemed to have broken down because a 20-year-old was able to get on top of a building, crawl around with spectators watching and calling it out to the people nearby, the police nearby. They say, see something, say something. They said something.
Security experts point out a fundamental failure in the pre-event planning and real-time monitoring. Swecker believes the perimeter should have been pushed out further, the roof covered, and says the response and the lack of quick communication to the detail on the podium could have been life-threatening.
Their job is not to stand there and shoot it out. It's not to stand there and assess the situation. Their job is to get him out of the danger zone and on his way. And in fact, a little known fact is the Secret Service until yesterday has never fired their weapon in a protection detail to protect a protectee.
A close call with this photo now shared around the globe, raising alarms.
He ducked down very quickly, got low, but then he resisted getting off the podium. And that was his personality coming through. He recognized this was a moment, and he pulled his head up and he pumped his fist. Great moment for him, but the Secret Service should never have allowed that.
While Trump rallies, size and exposure pose particular challenges, the future of how all large political events are held in the future is under the microscope.
This will be studied, and this will be a lot of lessons learned, but it won't, maybe not quickly enough. But I think the point's been made. And I think the DNC, the RNC, and rallies going forward, you're probably going to see whoever's speaking on the podium in some sort of bulletproof plexiglass bubble.
Laura Levine, WRAL News in Raleigh.
That would be quite the sight. The FBI has confirmed there will be a thorough investigation to determine what happened and how the shooter was able to get into position in the first place. This investigation could take months and may lead to changes in security protocols and procedures.
Let's bring in CNN law enforcement analyst Whitney Wild and CNN chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst John Miller. Whitney, let me go to you first. Do we have an answer from the Secret Service as to why they did not sweep this building? I mean, I've covered so many rallies over the years, and these outdoor rallies in particular are very worrisome. And one has to think that that's standard operating procedure, that they would sweep this building.
So here's how this perimeter worked. This building was outside of the perimeter. So our understanding is that the Secret Service, that agency, did not sweep that building, but instead they left that to local law enforcement. So when you consider how perimeters are built out, there are basically concentric circles of responsibility here. So there's sort of a first line and a second line. And in this case, the Secret Service had deferred to the security of that building to local law enforcement. Ultimately, though, the Secret Service is responsible for the totality of that incident. Again, as you pointed out, a source tells CNN that a local counter-sniper team was responsible for covering that building. Additionally, I have been told that that building was considered a post. And what that means is that somebody was supposed to be there. Who that person is, we don't know yet. And as I've been talking to other sources about how this would work, there are sort of two scenarios here. So there's a scenario where you actually have somebody assigned to the building, they are not allowed to leave, or you have somebody who's in a roaming post. And these are all the questions that we're trying to figure out. Was this a roaming post? Was somebody supposed to be physically at that building who simply wasn't there? And if so, which agency was responsible for that? And then further, the big question for the Secret Service is, what did they tell local law enforcement to do? Because there seems to be some confusion about roles and responsibilities here. Jim, back to the significance of the sweep. The reality is a sweep very early in the day, may not have prevented an incident like this. The reality is this gunman was seen at the perimeter with a firearm outside of the perimeter, later got onto the roof. So, that's later in the day. A sweep that occurs in the morning. The impact of that, it's virtually impossible to say, possibly a moot point. But this is all helpful context in understanding how this day unfolded, where the Secret Service's mind was operationally, and whose responsibility was where in terms of this overall security plan, Jim.
Yeah, John, I mean, what's your reaction to all of this? I mean, you know all too well about how local law enforcement has to coordinate with Secret Service on protecting in these kinds of situations. But it just seems to me that this is sort of descending into finger pointing. It seems like the Secret Service should have had a handle on this, whether it was left to law enforcement or not.
Well, obviously, looking back in hindsight, it's quite clear that that building was a vulnerability. How do we know that? Because it was exploited as one, and the former president was almost killed. Looking at it from a systemic problem, what Whitney says is dead on, which is the Secret Service owns the inner perimeter. They share the mid-perimeter with local law enforcement. And the outer perimeter usually falls to local law enforcement. Now, when I had the Secret Service in New York, when we were moving President Trump, President Obama, President Biden through the streets, we had 36,000 police officers. So we were able to fill a lot of those gaps. But in a small area like Butler County, local law enforcement is short. The Secret Service is also an undersized agency. And when you look at the number of personnel they had at the Chicago convention prepping, the number of personnel they had in Milwaukee getting ready, the number of personnel they had on a First Lady trip, the people they had with the president, that's why they lean so heavily on local law enforcement. And in this case, they're going to be looking at every rally going forward very differently.
In a nation so often divided, it's a sad, shared, unifying pain.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Abraham Lincoln was the first U.S. president to be assassinated in 1865, having already survived an attempt on his life. 16 years later, President James Garfield was shot in the back. 20 years after that, President William McKinley. Then, in 1963.
And Mr. Kennedy, radiant in that pink outfit.
A horror broadcast around the world.
There has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy.
The president dead, Lyndon Johnson, sworn in aboard Air Force One. He had served for 5 years as war in Vietnam and civil rights at home further divided America. Martin Luther King was killed. Bobby Kennedy assassinated during presidential primaries. His son this year is running against Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
We're all Americans. We're better than this. This isn't the way that we want our country to look to our children, to look to people around the world.
Americans had hoped that they would never see another incident like this again. Certainly, I had hoped that.
Kim Hoggard was working for Ronald Reagan when he was shot. Press Secretary James Brady left wheelchair-bound.
After the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, security was ramped up exponentially. It made it very difficult for him to do the things that he wanted to do.
The president would romp to victory 3 years later.
You can't live scared.
This century, 2 shootings from 2 different parties. Republican Congressman Steve Scalise, Democrat Gabrielle Giffords. She was shot in 2011. Today she tweeted, Political violence is un-American and never acceptable, never. Scalise was shot at a baseball game. Donald Trump visited him at hospital.
The first one or two shots, you're not thinking it's a gunshot shot, but then by the third one, you know, and beyond, it's clear what's going on.
Tonight, that confusion, chaos and concern once again hangs over America, with elections still 3 months away.
Breaking news, 3 U.S. officials have confirmed with NBC News intelligence about an Iranian plot to assassinate former President Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is some big breaking news. The information caused the Secret Service to increase security around the former president. Now, this was all prior to what happened on Saturday. Let's bring in NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And so, Ken, a big headline here. What do we know?
Well, Kate, the first thing I want to say is that officials are telling us that this intelligence and this plot, they believe, had nothing to do with the 20-year-old shooter in Butler County, Pennsylvania on Saturday. That was just a horrible coincidence. But what we are being told is that intelligence came in recent weeks about a potential Iranian plot to assassinate Donald Trump, and that's over Trump's ordering the killing of Qasem Soleimani, that Iranian general, head of the Quds Force back in 2020. Very controversial move. The Iranian government was furious about that and has plotted to kill other American officials, according to U.S. intelligence, involved in that operation, including Mike Pompeo, who was the Secretary of State at the time, and John Bolton, who was the National Security Advisor, who still have security details to this day because of the risk of that Iranian plot. So now the intelligence is suggesting that the Iranians are targeting Donald Trump, and that was passed on to the Secret Service, that information, in recent weeks. And we are told it led the Secret Service to plus up, to augment Donald Trump's security detail. So what we saw Saturday was enhanced security, and that's going to raise a lot of questions in people's minds, given all the scrutiny of what many are calling a colossal security failure to secure that building, allow the sniper to get up on the roof, etc. So it's really sort of two threads of a story here. One, it's big news that there is an Iranian plot, according to U.S. officials, to assassinate the former president. It's also big news that the Secret Service augmented his security detail, and that's what we saw on Saturday when an assassin was able to get a sniper's position and almost kill the former president.